Good morning. Welcome to the Bay Area Experience, evidence-based policy webinar series organized by Policy Research at Hong Kong IAPS and co-sponsored by the CUHK Global China Research Program. I'm Fanny Cheung, the convener of Policy Research at Hong Kong IAPS and moderator of this webinar series. The CUHK Policy Research at Hong Kong IAPS program is dedicated to promoting cross-boundary and interdisciplinary collaboration on policy research. To facilitate academic exchanges and social awareness of different policy issues, we invite scholars, policymakers, and stakeholders to discuss policies across different areas. The focus of this series is the strategic development of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area, or GBA in short, one of the strategic focus areas of our Global China Research Program. The GBA comprises of the two special administrative regions of Hong Kong and Macau, and the 9 municipalities of Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Zhuhai, Foshan, Huizhou, Dongguan, Zhongshan, Jiangmen, and Shaoqing in Guangdong Province. The development of the Greater Bay Area is key to the strategic planning of the country. The aim is to leverage the advantages of the above cities and regions to contribute to cooperation and integration among districts and to promote regional economic development. The plans for the Greater Bay Area cover multiple policy areas, including economy, innovation and technology, urban planning, education, and others. We have planned a monthly Greater Bay Area webinar through July this year. Today's webinar is on the limits to Hong Kong's integration in the Greater Bay Area. The development of GBA is key to the strategic planning of the country, and Hong Kong plays an important role in promoting regional economic development. In this webinar, the speakers and discussants will focus on the limits of Hong Kong's integration into the GBA and on the topic of sub-regional economic integration with Chinese characteristics. 3 strands of economic theories on integration would be presented, namely the classic European model, sub-regional economic region, integration, and economic liberalization and policy coordination, to explain the limited level of integration achieved by Hong Kong. Professor Yan Wing-sung, former chair and currently adjunct professor of the Department of Economics at CUHK, will be our key speaker. Our 2 discussants are Professor Shen Jianfa, professor at the Department of Geography and Resource Management at CUHK, and Professor Sara Zhong, associate professor at the Department of Sociology at CUHK. We'll invite Professor Zhong to give his 30 minutes presentation first, followed by 10 minutes discussion by the 2 discussants each. And we'll save all the questions to the Q&A session at the end. Please send your questions to our administrators at the chat box, and we'll invite you to raise your questions at the Q&A session. Let me first introduce our keynote speaker today, Professor Yan Wing-sung. Professor Sung is the former chair of the Department of Economics and has been the chair for 15 years before he retired. He's currently adjunct professor at the Department of Economics. Professor Zhong obtained his PhD in economics from the University of Minnesota in 1979. He received 2 prestigious awards in the field of economics in China, namely the Sun Yifang Award of Economic Science in 2009 to 10, and the award of He Kan Cheung Research Foundation of Development Economics in 2009. He has served as editor or editorial board member of many international journals. He is also an advisor of numerous academic or policy think tanks. His research interests cover international trade and economic development in the economies of the Chinese mainland, Hong Kong, and Taiwan. He has authored 9 books, edited 7 books, and published numerous articles in the area. Please join me in welcoming Professor Zhong. Professor Zhong, please.
Thanks to Professor Fanny Cheung for the kind introduction. And thanks to Policy Research at Hong Kong IAPS, for organizing this webinar. Without further ado, I will proceed to the presentation. Okay, and I use a share screen to go to my PPT. Okay, the title presentation, limits to Hong Kong's presentation in the Greater Bay Area, sub-regional economic integration with Chinese characteristics. Okay, and well, the question is, integration of Hong Kong in the GBA or the Greater Pearl River Delta has been promoted for more than 40 years since the opening of China. But the level of integration achieved is still limited. Why is that the case? Well, first I'll talk about the international context, what we can learn from economic theories and international experience on limits of integration. And then I'll go to my works on this limits some 3 decades ago. And a lot of my comments back those days, still apply now, I think. And then we'll go into the asymmetries in integration between Hong Kong and GBA or the mainland. 3 important asymmetries. Number 1, in the level of openness. Number 2, in level of development. And the third and last and most important asymmetry is in size. The Hong Kong is small, the mainland or GBA is big. The Hong Kong small size and capacity limitation is a very severe limit and bottleneck in integration. And lastly, I will talk about COVID and post-COVID. Does that herald a new chapter in integration? Well, 1 country, 2 systems is a unique arrangement that sets both the framework and limits of Hong Kong's integration in GBA. And it is not integration of nations and hence limited application of the European model. And it is more similar to other sub-regional economic zones, which applies to integration in geographically contiguous but politically separated borders. For example, ASEAN Growth Triangles, in the BART economic zone comprising Thailand, Cambodia, and parts of Laos. But GBA is unique that we have 3 customs territories under 1 country, and I call it sub-regional economic integration with Chinese characteristics. And talking about international context, we need to distinguish between shallow versus deep integration. Shallow integration, largely arm's length commodity trade, promoted through lowering barriers at the border, mostly tariffs or quotas, safety, health standards, and so on. And one of the best examples is Hong Kong's outward processing in the Pearl River Delta. Imported components were imported tariff-free. As long as they are processed into exports, okay? And this arm's length trade developed very rapidly, and that is shallow integration. By deep integration, we talk about, bilateral investment, services trade, financial integration. Those are promoted through coordination of domestic regulations or behind the border measures. For example, IVS tourists offshore renminbi, Shenzhen, Shanghai, Hong Kong Stock Connect. For example, for the Stock Connect, you need to coordinate the financial regulations in the mainland and also in Hong Kong, and these are behind the border measures, and these tend to be much more complicated and slow. Well, deep integration through coordination of domestic regulation is usually slower and difficult. I mean, not just between Hong Kong and GBA, but throughout the whole world. And I think one of the best examples is COVID regulation between mainland and Hong Kong. And these are domestic regulations. And we have been trying to coordinate, dovetail these COVID regulations in order to promote, to resume normal border clearance, normal immigration procedure between Hong Kong and the mainland. And for a year, for 2 years, we failed, and we are still failing that. And we don't know when we will be able to dovetail, domestic COVID regulations between Hong Kong and the mainland. We haven't been able to do it now. So this kind of integration is coordinating domestic regulation is usually very slow and very difficult. And deep integration involving high-end services, for example, telecom, logistics, transportation, medical, and all professional. And finance is also slow and difficult because it involves entrenched vested interest, big and monopolistic firms. For example, in the banking industry in China, you have 4 or 5 big and monopolistic firms. Opening will affect their vested interest. For example, for the medical association, powerful professional bodies, and complicated liberalization measures that differ from sector by sector. Liberalization of finance is very different from liberalization of telecom, which is very different from liberalization of logistics, and so on and so forth. So it has to be done sector by sector. There is no overall panacea. And financial liberalization is particularly complicated and risky, and it is usually very time-consuming. Okay. Well, talking about the classical European model, we distinguish between 4 tiers of integration. Okay, free trade area, customs union, single market, and economic union. The European Union has progressed to the highest tier. Hong Kong and the mainland is still in the first and lowest tier free trade area. And in fact, we will not be able to progress to a customs union for reasons I will talk about later. In a customs union, Hong Kong and the mainland need to have common external tariffs against the rest of the world. And Hong Kong is a free port. And the only way for Hong Kong and the mainland or the GBA to form a customs union is for the mainland to abolish all its tariffs, for the mainland to become a free tariff country, which is utopian and not feasible. Well, this model highlights the mechanics of integration in separate customs territories. And the virtue of a customs union is that within the customs union, you don't need to have customs clearance because you have a common external tariff against the rest of the world. But in a free trade area, between members of the free trade area, you still need customs clearance because you have different external tariffs against the rest of the world. Well, mainland the GB has been FTA since the CEPA. Proceeding onto any higher tier is impossible as long as one country, 2 systems holds. Main questions and analysis. Well, my works from 3 decades back still largely apply. That 3 decades ago, I talked about Hong Kong's integration in GPRD, which models apply. I talk about development of GPRD as a single integrated entity. I talk about the international context, the impact of GPRD, now called the GBA, on trade and investment in the world. And I talk about limits, I mean some 3 decades ago, to GPRD integration in the international context. Okay, one of my work, I mean, which is an occasional paper of the Hong Kong HKIAPS. It was published in 1992, exactly 3 decades ago, okay? The title, Non-Institutional Economic Integration via Cultural Affinity. Non-institutional, because in 1992, Hong Kong and the mainland were not yet a free trade area, okay? In fact, China had not entered the WTO in 1992. And I said at the time in that work that even after 1997, that it was of course 5 years before the reversion of Hong Kong. Hong Kong and the mainland will still be less institutionally integrated than Italy and Ireland, which are both members of the EEC. Italy and Ireland is a customs union, is a single market, and both of them use the euro, a single currency, and it's an economic union. And as long as one country, two systems endures, I mean, Hong Kong and mainland will be less institutionally integrated than Italy and Ireland, or any two members of the European Union. I said at that time then that as Hong Kong is a free port, the only way the mainland and Hong Kong and form a trade bloc is for the mainland to abolish all its tariffs. This is obviously ludicrous and utopian. A trading bloc involving Hong Kong and Shenzhen is thus also utopian. In that work, I talk about the second line in Shenzhen. I mean, Shenzhen has a second line separating Shenzhen from the rest of China. And theoretically, Shenzhen can become a separate customs territory and form a trade bloc with Hong Kong. And that is also utopian, and for reasons I talk about in that work. But for lack of time, I don't want to cover it here. Okay, and then in another work of mine, okay, called Fifth Dragon, Emergence of the Pearl River Delta, I talk about the emergence of the Greater Pearl area, Greater Pearl River Delta in the international context. The GPRD is a phenomenon. I mean, it's the economic powerhouse of Guangdong and the crown jewel of the Chinese economy. I mean, nowadays we say that GBA is the crown jewel of the Chinese economy, okay? I talk about international context. Thailand was then regarded as a promising fifth dragon after, of course, the 4 Asian dragons. At the time, it was, when my book was published, was already surpassed by Pearl River Delta in inward FDI and also exports in the early 1990s. I talk about sub-regional integration and compare the GPRD with the ASEAN growth triangles and the BART area and so on. I add the GDP of Hong Kong and Macau to PRD and get that of the GPRD and so on. I mean, like people what they are doing with GBA right now, okay? And I said then that Hong Kong's integration, the progress will be highly uneven. I said then that, well, I talk about sub-regional integration, okay? GBA, not integration of nations, but similar to other sub-regional economic zones. And take advantage of complementarities in factor endowment and technological capacity among economies at different stage of development. And GPRD was the first and most successful sub-economic zone in East Asia. It stimulated formation of the Southern Growth Triangle, comprising Singapore, Johor, and Batam. And then, of course, it surpassed Thailand in inward FDI and exports. And likely, at that time, I said that GPRD was likely to be the fifth dragon, okay? PRD attracted so much foreign direct investment in 1993, the FDI in Thailand declined and FDI dropped by 60% in Malaysia. And that was in my 1995 book. And it reinforced formation of growth triangles, and the East Growth Triangle and also the Northern Growth Triangle. Okay. And then in that book, I also talk about prospect of future integration. And I said then, due to the many differences in political, legal, and economic systems between the Delta and Hong Kong, integration of GPRD will be highly uneven. Controls on movement of goods are relatively liberal, whereas controls on movement of capital and foreign exchange are more strict, and controls on migration are more strict. Integration of commodity market will proceed rapidly, I said then, but even in the commodity market, we need to distinguish export processing industries from those selling in the domestic market. As integration of industries selling to the domestic market will be less rapid due to China's strict foreign exchange controls. And integration of service and industries will be slow, as services tend to be non-tradable, and strict controls on migration hamper integration of services. Services are mostly performed on people, and you need people-to-people movement for deep integration of services. Integration of financial markets, I said then, 3 decades ago, will be slow due to controls of forex and capital, foreign exchange. Well, no, nowadays, China largely achieved current account convertibility in January 1995, okay, when my book was published. And many analysts at that time believed that China will be able to achieve capital account convertibility 1 or 2 years after it achieved current account convertibility. That was in 1997, that many World Bank economists at that time believed China would achieve capital account convertibility in 1997. Of course, we now know that was not the case. It is now 25 years into after 1997, and China still has not yet achieved capital account convertibility and still has no timetable for achieving capital account convertibility. And without that, integration of financial market and capital market will be slow. Okay, I said then, some 30 years ago, that that will be the case. Okay, and then in a recent article of mine in the Roulette Handbook of Contemporary Hong Kong, I talk about 3 asymmetries: asymmetry in openness, level of development, and size. And I focus on these asymmetries pose both opportunities and challenges. For example, size. A small economy integrated with a big one, the opportunity is obvious. You have a big market to get into. But I focus on challenge in this talk. First, asymmetry in openness. That Hong Kong is more open than the mainland. And we get repeated complaints that though the big gate is open, small doors are still closed. Small doors, 閂門沒有開, because the Chinese economy is not that open. Level of development. Integration of Hong Kong with the mainland or with GBA implies severe deterioration of integration, income distribution in Hong Kong. I mean, there is a Heckscher-Ohlin theorem. When a developed economy integrates with a less developed economy, the impact on income distribution in the developed economy will be bad. Unlike that in the developing economy, the implication on income distribution in the developing economy will be good, but in the developed economy, it will be bad. That is the 1% versus 99%. That the high income earners in the developed economy has to compete with the low wage earners in the developing economy. And you have illegal migrants, social conflicts, and all these problems for asymmetric integration involving economies at different levels of development. And size. Easily overwhelm Hong Kong's capacity, especially in services, which require cross-border traveling. And this will be the focus of our analysis. Okay, size. These graphs are mainland visitors in Hong Kong. This is M permit, multiple entry visitors. Of course, it grew very fast to 51 million in 2018, and then 2019, we know what happened, okay? social political disturbance in Hong Kong, and then COVID. And permit visitors, okay, saw tenfold before it was changed. And due to overloading Hong Kong, and permit limited to 1 trip per week in 2015. And in this occasional paper of mine, I talk about the economic benefits of IVS visitors in Hong Kong. And I pointed out that these benefits are limited. Okay, in 2013, there was the latest statistics in my paper. M permit visitors total this much. IVS visitors total this much. The M permit visitors only generate 0.3%. IVS visitors generate 1.6% of Hong Kong's GDP. Okay, quite small. Overcrowding, substantial. In terms of per capita value added, only 500 for M permit, 5 times more for overseas visitors. Number of jobs, okay, you can just read the statistics. Okay, what is the socio-political consequence of overloading? Okay, well, infant formula, mainland pregnant couple coming to Hong Kong to give birth in order to acquire residency status, parallel trade, what have you. Real estate price soared, rentals soared, ma and pa stores replaced by chain stores, generating social conflicts, populism, anti-China sentiment, separatism. I mean, very bad, highly damaging for Hong Kong mainland relations. Capacity of Hong Kong services, very limited. Attractive to, especially those attractive to mainlanders are in short supply. Medical care, university education, leisure and camping resorts, residential real estate. COVID-19 temporarily halted the influx. However, with continued integration, incoming in the future will surely surpass historical levels, and we will get this problem back quite soon. Challenge of overcrowding, we can look at Macau's commotion with resumption of mainland visitors in November 2020. Saw in November relaxation of COVID controls in Macau, and this is the videos, I mean, gone viral, I mean, in Macau, just like underworld gangs arguing, parallel traders. And Macau is much more tolerant of mainland visitors compared to Hong Kong. But that was what happened in Macau, so we can anticipate what will happen in Hong Kong. Once effective management, I mean, once with resumption of normal border traffic. Okay, challenge of asymmetry in size. Okay, Hong Kong capacity limitation is limited by efficiency of its construction industry. There is a paradox. Hong Kong is small, but of course you can expand capacity with reclaiming land from the sea. You build more land and what have you. I mean, like what Macau or Singapore has done. But to do that, you need construction. And Hong Kong construction industry is highly inefficient. Okay, average construction cost. New York, well, where I am right now, okay, quite expensive. San Francisco, number 2. Hong Kong, comparable to San Francisco and New York, much higher than Tokyo, Singapore, or so. Why? Well, we look at 4 recent mega projects, okay? Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau Bridge, the express rail with Guangzhou, Shatin to Central Link, Zhong Shen, the Sangyuan Way. All this very substantial cost overrun, highly delayed, cost overruns of 10 to 20 billion, delay of 2 to 3 years. Worse still, you get corner cutting, compromising quality and safety scandals, counterfeiting, false reporting, plague the Hong Kong, Zhuhai, Macau Bridge, and also Zhong Shen. And why all four mega projects run into these huge problems? I mean, you get 深层次矛盾, and it is with Hong Kong's infrastructure, Hong Kong's construction industry. Look at the age distribution of Hong Kong's construction workers. The largest number are 50 to 59 years old. And young workers, very few, okay? The largest number are close to retirement. Average age 47 something. Few workers in the young age group. Unless more young people enter, it will age more. And Hong Kong lack youngsters because the Hong Kong population is itself aging rapidly, plus the construction industry is an offensive trade that young people don't like, okay? And you look at the average age of construction workers, okay? The overall workforce and the construction workers. And construction workers are older and getting older faster, age faster. 1991 to 2019, okay, average age of Hong Kong's workforce gone up by 8.4 years. Average age of construction workers rose by 10 years from 37 to 47, okay? So most of Hong Kong's construction workers are close to retirement. Okay, if you look at the skilled construction workers, it is even worse, okay? Compare the median age with the skilled workers with the average, okay? 2017, median age 8.4 years older, and so on. And building new railways, we talk about the Northern Metropolis and Lantau tomorrow, okay? Northern Metropolis will have 5 new railways plus 1 spur line. Lantau tomorrow will have 3 new railways. Another railway that will be needed but not yet planned is to connect North Metropolis with downtown. So you need 5 plus 3 plus 1, 9 railways, excluding this spur line. And Hong Kong's rail links, they have been the most expensive in the world with repeated delays and huge cost overruns. Cost per kilometer, 3.4 billion for the express rail, 5.7, okay, even worse for Satin Central, Zhong, 6.2 billion for Hong Kong Island West that broke a world record. And there is a long government, review of scandals and counterfeiting in Zhong. And they conclude that building more than 2 rails simultaneously will overload MTR, and Hong Kong should avoid building 2 rails simultaneously. How long does it take to build the Zhong? Well, more than 10 years, the answer. And how can Hong Kong build 9 new rails in a realistic time frame? I mean, I have talked to very knowledgeable railway engineers in Hong Kong, and they say there's no way that can be done. Okay. Well, that is the Northern Metropolis, there is Northern Lantau, and I will skip this, okay. Well, what are the results of this construction scandals? They are real bad because it sapped the confidence of the public in investors in Hong Kong's construction industry, okay. Investors avoid investing in major construction work. Hong Kong youngsters avoid joining construction work because it is not safe. I mean, the accident rate is extremely high. Well, I mean, if you compare Hong Kong's, I mean, those mega projects, the safety record is extremely bad. And politically, you have public resistance. They are often labeled as white elephants. So for example, Lantau tomorrow has been labeled as pouring money into the sea, okay? Construction bottleneck can be alleviated by imported workers, as in Macau. However, this risks political and social opposition. And in fact, in Macau, imported construction workers has been a perennial political problem in Macau, despite the fact that Macau has been much more tolerant, okay, than Hong Kong. Well, conclusion. Hong Kong's integration in GBA faces objective limitations and severe constraints. Besides many differences in political, legal, economic, whatever, between two social systems under one country, two systems. Small size and capacity limitation is a major bottleneck. Looking back at 25 years of post-reversion experience, IVS visitors, building of major cross-border projects were meant to hasten Hong Kong's integration into GBA. Okay, 加速融入大湾区，加速融入国家发展大局。However, for Hong Kong's integration in GBA or into the 国家发展大局，加速 may not be 更好。What is important? What Chairman Xi asked us to do is to 更好 better, integrate better, and faster may be the opposite of better. While history does not repeat itself, those that fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. Okay, coming to the conclusion. COVID and post-COVID mainland integration. Will COVID herald a new chapter in Hong Kong mainland relations? Well, cross-border passenger movements have largely been shut down for more than 2 years. Efforts to dovetail the many differences in COVID regulation between the two systems to resume normal custom procedure proved futile so far. And with the latest events, I mean, it looks as if it is going to be futile, okay, quite far into the future as well. However, in the recent fifth COVID wave, Hong Kong's resistance to mainland imported workers and professionals, well, I think it dissipated somewhat. Mainland construction team entered in Xintian via a temporary bridge over the Shenzhen River to build a hospital there, which has been, I think, partly completed. So the COVID crisis may effectively and decisively change Hong Kong's resistance towards integration, thus removing a significant hurdle to integration.
Thank you so much, Professor Zhong, for your very rich presentation. There are many challenges that we need to address. Let me now invite our first discussant, Professor Jianfa Shen, to give his comments. Professor Shen is professor at the Department of Geography and Resource Management at CUHK. He is also director of the Research Center for Urban and Regional Development at Hong Kong IAPS. Professor Shen obtained his PhD from the University of London. His research interests focus on urbanization, migration, urban and regional development, urban governance, and urban competitiveness. He has published 198 papers and 28 books, including Urbanization, Regional Development, and Governance in China in 2018 by Routledge. And he recently received the 2020-2021 RGC Senior Research Fellowship Award. According to reports from the Stanford University, Professor Shen is one of the top 2% of scientists in the world in the year of 2019 to 2021. Please join me in welcoming Professor Jianfa Shen. Professor Shen, please.
Thank you, Professor Zhang, for your introduction. Also, thanks to Professor Song for very insightful analysis of the Hong Kong integration into GBA. I think Professor Song proposed a very important question: why integration is still limited in GBA? As we all know, the context of this particular GBA area, we have one country, two systems, and 3 customs territories. And most likely we have a regional integration with the Chinese characteristics. And Professor Song also mentioned the European models of integration. We think this model is very, very deep integration because it involves political, financial, the labor market integration. But we also know that United Kingdom just left the European Union. I think some of the arguments is that issues of immigration, and also some of the the decision power is being handed over to European Union. Okay, so for some other reason, the UK left this integration union. Okay, anyway. But I think Professor also mentioned that the GBA may not move into such kind of full integration. Okay, I think also agree that particularly in the near future. And I think one of the major arguments of Professor is that in the GBA area, we are lack of the institutional integration both before and after 1997, because Hong Kong is a free port, mainland is not. So how can you put the two together? So this is a major, I think, hurdle in terms of the institutional integration. And the professor also mentioned of the difficulties of deeper integration, because Hong Kong is a very open economy, a financial market linking to the world. And we have the free movement of the money, while mainland may be not to such kind of degree. Also, I can also mention the other extremes of our situation. Some sectors are closed, and as we know, the doctors' training and the registration is based on Hong Kong. So anyone coming from outside to be as a doctor, you must pass examination. Although recently we do some kind of amendment of this arrangement. Anyway, this is the examples of a closed sector, not to open to anywhere. Okay. But also, a professor actually suggesting that degrees of integration may vary with sectors. Some sectors may be more open, some may be not. So I will ask Professor Zhong, our first question is that, which sector can achieve better integration? And when we can consider, let's say, we have different schools, universities, hospitals in Hong Kong, it's meaning that some schools we know that they're using the IB curriculum, universities may also learn by other outside bodies. We're not sure about the hospitals. Okay, anyway, these are potential areas we can discuss in terms of the integration by sector, okay? And also Professor Song's very influential book, Fifth Dragon, I think I read it. It's a 1995 book. Mentioned two things, okay, about the controls on capital and the foreign exchange is very strict. Controls on migration is most strict. I can also add, at that time, before 1997, visitors from mainland also highly controlled as well. So my second question is how to assess any changes since 1995 up to now, or any more room for further relaxation in these areas of control. Okay. Also very important, I think, idea Professor Song mentioned is about the small size and the capacity limitation of Hong Kong. And particularly in terms of medical care, university education, leisure, and residential housing, all actually are in shorter supply. But I will think that actually for many of these, most of the items, a city should be able to control the demand. For example, I'll just say hotel. If we want to control the number of tourists coming to Hong Kong, if there's a long distance tourists that come to Hong Kong, they must find hotel. If we consider that we can only accommodating 500,000 or some numbers of tourists, we can control how many hotel rooms should be in Hong Kong. Then the capacity will control how many visitors can come into Hong Kong. Of course, the problem is about the visitors from Shenzhen. They don't have to stay in hotel in Hong Kong. Okay, then I think we can think about the quota. How many times these visitors can come in from Hong Kong, from Shenzhen to Hong Kong, whether it's one time a week or once a month. This is something I think also are open for discussion, because basically we still have a boundary. How we control the visitor flow is still possible. Okay. About the mega infrastructure projects, Professor mentioned about the bottleneck that we actually does not have enough capacity to building more projects. Okay, actually in reality, actually, if you needed to import some workers from outside, then you're able to expand your capacity. Of course, as we know, in Hong Kong we have political and social opposition, so we actually in some kind of the this deadlock. We need some more workers or capacities, but inside society, we have strong voice against the importation of the outside workers. So I would consider this is a governance issue. Okay, for example, if MTI can only handle 2 projects, if we're going to building 3 or more, of course, we first have to decide whether it is necessary for 3 or more projects. Okay, if it's not necessary, we don't have to talk about that. But if it's necessary, then the government have to decide. Okay, if MTI couldn't handle more than 2, we must rely on outside companies to do the projects. Okay, that, of course, it's a governance issue. How we can convince the public, and the government must be effective making a wise decisions about how can we proceed with such kind of projects. Okay, then finally, I want to general comments on the GBA regional integration. I think the GBA regional integration is a substantial project, have a very clear strategic objective. It's not a political, I think, project or political slogan. It's for building a more competitive region in the world. Okay, and for past many years, I have been very interested in the competitiveness of cities and the regions as a geographer. They're also concerned about intercity cooperation and competition as a process. Okay, and then I also find out that to study such kind of cooperation and competition, you also must pay attention to the issues of urban regional governance. Okay, why cities engage in cooperation? Because cities are complementary and have different strengths. Okay, there are win and win situations. Cities will benefit from cooperation. If there's benefit, they will join the cooperation. If there's no benefit, you will not join. So I will say cooperation must going through the lines of win and win situation. Okay, we must find the common interest. There's something we will benefit, then the cooperation will go ahead smoothly. Secondly, cities will engage in competition. Many studies in many other regions of the world, they find out that competition is normal. It's very normal. It's something I kind of daily life. Okay. Also, of course, cooperation can also become a kind of very normal arrangement because each city, you have your own interest for your own particular projects. So generally, we will say competition cannot be avoided. So all the cities have to live with competition while you are seeking for cooperation to enhance your strengths. The final slide, I think almost, okay. So actually, Professor also mentioned in the cities, I think situations, we have stakeholders, different stakeholders. They have quite different interests. We have companies, we have NGOs, we have individuals, we have governments. But for the first 3, okay, companies, NGOs, individuals, everybody is very smart. You are very wise. You will make your own decision. How you're going to guide your own companies or your individual decisions about where you're going to live in, where you're going to do business. Okay, all these, I think, this is based on free market. Okay, but governments is critical. Your governments will influence all other bodies' activities. So we think that governments need to make critical decisions on city strategies, regulations, incentives, and promotion. So I think in Hong Kong, okay, we have a small government. We are very good to implementing policies made already, but I think we lack some kind of more creative capacity to design or leading the city into the future. This is something I think our governments may pay attention to. Not only listen to a few experts, but we also need a much more strong capacity in terms of decision making.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Shen. We'll wait till after the second discussion to ask Professor Zhong to answer your 2 questions later on. Yeah, let me introduce our second discussant, Professor Sara Zhong. Professor Zhong obtained her PhD degree from Pennsylvania State University, University Park. She has been with the Chinese University a long time ago, and she is now associate professor at the Department of Sociology. Meanwhile, she has been a visiting scholar at Cambridge University, Australian National University, and University of California, Irvine. She's also currently Associate Director of the China Law Program at Hong Kong IAPS. Her research and teaching interests include social development, criminology, criminal justice, and gender studies. Please join me in welcoming Professor Sara Zhong. Sara, please.
Okay, thank you. So I will share my PowerPoint first. So thank you, Professor Song's inspiring talk and Professor Shen Jianfa's discussion and comments. Because I'm not an expert of economics and also the regionalism, so I will talk more about the social and cultural barriers when we try to develop GBA. Okay. I totally agree with Professor Song about the limitations and opportunities, but a lot of constraints in this process. The openness, level of development, and the size, all of them are problems. But before we try to fix these problems, or at least reduce such economic related barriers, we need to think more about the deep roots, the social roots of the conflicts between Hong Kong and mainland China. I just provide some theories in our area, but we are doing some large-scale surveys in GBA, including Guangdong, 5 cities of Guangdong, Hong Kong, and Macau, but we are analyzing the data, so we don't really have any preliminary results now. Okay, so the first theory of our all very familiar, the Huntington's clash of civilization. Some economists already mentioned that or predict GBA would be very successful because we are belonging to the same civilization, the Chinese one. But actually, some critiques about Huntington is he only talk about the ground civilization, ground categories of civilization. But actually, we also need to pay attention to the specific or sub civilizations within the ground civilization. So actually, Hong Kong was a colony of UK for so many years, and over the past 100 years, I think Hong Kong's culture become very different from mainland China, and such differences, disparities, cultural disparities would be very persistent. So we have to accept this kind of differences and disparities, and the social distance, group boundary, or sometimes identities are so strong, also strong. So one such strong social distance, group boundary there, how can we develop further the development of GBA? That's a big challenge. So some general suggestion, maybe we try to realize the differences, identify the differences, and at the same time try to promote the commonalities. But of course, our disciplines, scholars in our disciplines could think about what the commonalities between Hong Kong and mainlanders. Maybe the Chinese culture, Chinese history, we don't really know, and also the pursuit of more fire society. So we want more fair and equal distribution, so to help the poor people, whatever. So that could be our common pursuits. Okay. The second one is, I think Professor Song already mentioned, when you use the term the level of development, you also mentioned the great level of social inequality in Hong Kong. So actually, among 7 million Hong Kong citizens, 1.3 million are below poverty line. So such great level of social inequality certainly may nurture or encourage extremists. Because I study terrorism a little bit. So when I study terrorists, are those extremists, radical, political radicals, where they come from? So the such especially absolute poverty and relative deprivation are out there. When we think about especially young people, certainly most young people, their lives are relatively okay, but we have social statistics, even economics department have statistics. For more than 10 years, Hong Kong young people's salary didn't really increase. So, and they have had harsh time to, very difficult to buy house, their flats. So their housing situation is really worse, kind of become worse than before. And then how about what kind of population social groups are more likely to go to Liandeng and to watch Apple Daily, those young, extreme young peoples. So how can we reduce social inequality in Hong Kong to make young people feel this is a good direction, a positive direction to move? In our survey, we actually include we oversample the Hong Kong young people to ask their willing to their impression to GBA, attitudes toward GBA, and their willing to move to Guangdong to work. Of course, the results, tentative results are now really kind of a sad story. They have strong resistance to GBA, very negative attitudes toward the GBA. So how we can let people think the development of GBA actually could help the vulnerable people to reduce social inequality. We not just benefit the powerful people, powerful social class. We don't really know how to do that. Okay. The third one is all about migration, because when we talk about the development of an area, no matter which area, we want elites, we want high-skilled migrants, talented migrants. So actually GBA area, we are competing on the Guangdong, Shenzhen and Guangzhou, Macau, Hong Kong, actually those big cities are competing for high-skilled migrants. So this is just one aspect about which city can finally get more migrants. But GBA has an advantage because it's very close, geographically very close. So we can move like a back and forth. So some months in Guangzhou, some months in Shenzhen, some months in Hong Kong. That's possible. And some people, some professionals really do this way. So that's one advantage. But another concern is about the migrant-native relationship. So if those migrants perceive they got a lot of discrimination, exclusion from the locals, they will not stay. I think they will be reluctant to stay longer. But we use this theory, a migrant-native contact hypothesis. This contact hypothesis basically from social psychology. I think Fanny may know more about that. So if some scholars would say it's a nonlinear relationship, it doesn't mean that more contacts would be more positive attitudes toward migrants. Could be reversed. So at the beginning, before 1997, we can see, if we're back to the history, Professor Zhong would be more familiar with, you already started. At that time, actually, Hong Kong mainland's relationship relatively okay, because there were less contacts, direct contacts between mainlanders and Hong Kong people. And after that, gradually, like Professor Zhong's talk today, you already mentioned many negative contacts, not positive contacts. Those negative contacts include new immigrants, the single entry permits, the visitors, pregnant women and strong-faith children, and those parallel traders, the milk powder formula. So those negative contexts actually increase conflicts and enhance the negative attitudes toward mainland migrants. But at the same time, any positive context, yes, but actually Hong Kong media and Hong Kong, even my students, they never realize this. There are many positive contexts, but no media try to address that way. Those high-skilled, talent mainland migrants, a lot of them are in Hong Kong, but they are invisible from the media. Okay, so that's why we did this survey. So we surveyed we use very scientific sampling to survey more than 3,000 high-skilled mainland migrants in Hong Kong, and also around 1,000 in Macau, and also around 1,000 in Hong Kong high-skilled migrants in Guangdong. So we do 3 parts. There's a large project led by Professor Eric Fang. So we can see the positive context. Actually, if we emphasize these parts, the relationship between Hong Kong and mainlanders may be increased. I'm not sure also, so it's just one suggestion. Since this is a nonlinear relationship, so actually in these recent 2.5 years, due to the COVID-19, actually our contacts decreased again. So I also agree with Professor Song, that may be an opportunity for the relation, so we re-establish the mainland Hong Kong relationship. So less context and more positive media message may benefit our future relationship and help the high-skilled migrants stay or settle in GPA area. Okay. The last one is about media. That's back to journalism. But anyway, since I studied social development, technology development, how technology affects our behaviors, our attitudes, even the economic development. So the media is very crucial, especially online media, mainly used by young people in Hong Kong. So young generation in Hong Kong, they mainly rely on the online media, the new social media. And if you look at those media information, that's totally disaster. So how can the conflict, the culture disparities already there, and those new media they mainly used exaggerate such negative impression. So how when they try to develop the GPA, what kind of media strategies we want to use? Otherwise, if we don't have this kind of thinking, so everything we feel this is good for GBA area, but actually it will be framed, constructed as a negative thing. Okay, so we are very vulnerable about that.
Well, I'm afraid we are running out of time. Please join me in thanking Professor Song Yan-Wing, Professor Shen Jianfa, and Professor Sara Zhong for a very rich and fruitful discussion on the challenges to integration in the Greater Bay Area. Our next webinar will be on education and labor market outcomes in Hong Kong and Guangdong. And the speaker will be Professor Oh Dong-Chu from our Department of Educational Administration and Policy. And the 2 discussants are Professor Stephen Chiu, Chair Professor of Sociology at the Education University of Hong Kong, and Professor Chen Li, Associate Professor from our Center for Chinese Studies at CUHK. And the webinar will be scheduled for the 29th of April at the same time, 11 a.m. to 12:15 p.m. Please join us on April 29th. And thank you all for coming to this webinar. Thank you. Bye-bye.